Well, hello everybody for the second time today. Welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa. And I know you've been waiting for him. He's back. He's back. He's back. Caleb is back. How are you, Caleb?
Speaking of backs, I threw my back out this morning a little bit ago, so
Yeah.
been some kind of stress and struggle here, but I'm okay.
Really good to have you. And I know that your back has been giving you issues lately. Lovely to see everybody in the chat. Pete, you're so lovely. Lisa D, you're so lovely. Everyone, you're so lovely. Kimberly, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. But before we go any further, Caleb, will you open us in prayer, please?
Sure. Heavenly Father, I bring my petition and ask for healing from you for my back and for other problems I have. Thank you for helping me get through what I'm going through. I ask that you help these good people here to bless them with your presence and with your healing grace, your mercy. I ask that you open their eyes, let them see the way that they should see. Protect us and keep us in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. Yay. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And yeah, we had a great interview with Barack from Nasara 17 earlier today as well. It was really cool. So if you guys didn't catch that one, please, go and when you do your binge watching on Era, be sure to catch him as well and give his channel a subscribe because he's really doing some cool stuff and definitely one to follow. So today we are going to be talking about something which I think is on a lot of people's minds, hearts, whatever, angels and demons, because I think there's a lot of confusion around what's what in the pot, right, Caleb, as far as that's concerned.
Right. A lot of esoteric knowledge that most people don't know.
Yeah. Well, you talk about the choir of angels. So I know we've had some conversations about this as well. So maybe what you can do is you can start off by just telling us what you know about the angelic realms and how it all fits in. And I want to just say off the top that I think we're probably going to take a two-part series with this one. So we probably will continue tomorrow with part 2 with us as well. So yeah, over to you.
Right. So most of the known knowledge comes from history. If you're a history buff, if you know anything about it, it comes from Dionysius and his interpretations of the angelic realms. A lot of the other stuff comes from Dante's Inferno, the demonic world. But I'm going from my perspective, what I know. So it's a pretty deep subject. There's a lot of misconceptions about angels and demons. So I want to put a keyword in your ears: solfeggio.
Yeah.
Has a lot to do with music. The spiritual world has a lot to do with music. So it's really important.
The solfeggio for me is very interesting because I know solfeggio from healing frequencies. You're going to find a lot of solfeggio healing frequencies all over the internet, actually. And I know from what we've also had conversations about, I mean, everything to do in these angelic realms is like sound, frequency, and vibration, sound, obviously music, etc. And I know there's a lot of people using the solfeggio frequencies, but I'm sure it can't all be good, right?
It can be either or. It's just like a knife on the table. You can use the knife to cut and slice your bread and cheese, or you can use that knife to kill the neighbor. Either way.
Right. Absolutely.
Since we're made up of pure energy for the most part, it has a way to influence the energy of yourself.
So how does that actually work, though? Can you explain it to us how it works?
If you're aware of the spirit, if you can see, like some people can see, I sent you a video about that. If you can explain that video maybe a little bit.
Which one? The one with
the laser.
That was super interesting, actually. The guy, and this was a video that I know a couple of days you sent it to me. The guy had red laser type lights, right? And he shone them, and then he had people actually look at them and look into the light in certain, I would imagine, in a certain way. And what happened was then that the people were able to start seeing runes and stuff like that. So things like the one guy was able to like see through the wall, right? And actually start seeing different images and shapes and stuff that is most certainly not visible to the naked eye, right? So
Right.
I think that in a nutshell is what it's about. Yeah.
Right. That's the hidden spirit that you don't get to see around you every day. But it doesn't mean that it's not there. That's the fabric of reality. It's called, or the tapestry, or the skein. You guys have heard me talk about the skein a few times. So
right.
I've been able to see that since I was a young boy.
Would it be a similar thing if we're looking at people looking into that laser technology, right? Using the laser technology. Now, some people, I mean, when you're looking at the third eye, right? And that's often where people with psychic abilities or intuitive abilities would have a developed third eye, so to speak. Are we talking about a similar type thing? Would it be a third eye that is open?
Yes, very much
Right.
so.
Okay.
They've done everything in their power to make sure that most people's third eye is closed.
Right, absolutely.
They introduce a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, a lot of addiction, a lot of nonsense to get you to not see it.
Right. So it's very interesting that, because I would just like to say from my perspective how I'd experienced people over the years regarding that. And I'd love your take on that, because I know it would be very relevant to what we're talking about. I'd often have people coming to me as a healer asking me to open up their third eye, right? And I'd go, well, no, I can't be doing that. Although you can do it. I know it's possible to do it. There are people out there who will do it. But for me, it's something that comes with the natural ability of developing that aspect of yourself. So it's like, really, if you're going to open up someone's third eye, and yes, because I know it has a lot to do with, obviously, the pineal as well as the pituitary gland, right? So in that way, it's about the person's natural gifts being developed. And then when you reach that certain point of being able to naturally open it, instead of forcing it open, right? Because I feel like a lot of this is forced. But if we're able to do it just naturally, that would make a difference, right?
Right. Imagine the first time you felt your stomach flip-flop when you felt weightless on an elevator or some other similar thing. You've been skydiving, Chantelle, so you know what that means to have that weightless feeling.
Yeah,
now imagine
absolutely.
that all of a sudden, you just all of a sudden get something similar to that, but a whole lot more intense. That's why you shouldn't have that third eye open, just unbidden. You have to be really prepared for that.
Wow. Okay. So when we have our third eye open, we obviously can see beyond the physical realm and the physical eyes. Then it's like the doors to the other dimensions start opening up, and then we can start seeing things in a much clearer way. I was able, and not just seeing, but also hearing. I mean, in my experience as a kid, I was able to hear the voices of the animals as well. I was able to see things that a lot of people couldn't see physically. I was able to see into people's bodies. Like when I say that, I mean, like I could see blockages. If people were sick, I could see there was like attachments on their body. Are we talking about this sort of thing? I could also see my angels, right? I could see God. Not all the time, but there were definitely times I could see God, right? So are we talking about, that's what we're talking about here, right?
Yeah. Hey, you ever hear the game Pin the Tail on the Donkey when you're young?
Yeah.
Well, it's like you're in this cosmic game of Pin the Tail on the Donkey. You can't see because you have a blindfold on. You're trying to figure things out just by feel and by the senses you do have. Imagine if somebody came up and took the blindfold off just all of a sudden with no preparation, no anything.
Right.
You find out you're in the middle of a giant football stadium with 80,000 people surrounding you. How would you feel? Especially if you found out that you were mostly naked. You were very, very vulnerable.
Right.
I imagine it would be quite the shock.
Yeah, indeed.
Something similar here.
And especially if you see things that you're not really that aren't always that kind or aren't always that. I know working with people when they just start seeing something or even hearing something the first or the second time, it's quite a scary experience for them, right?
Right.
So what really needs to happen, I guess, is that people need to be retrained. Is that what you're saying? Would you say that people would need to be retrained in terms of slowly catch the monkey, right?
Right. It's not so much retraining, it's realizing that you become new, recreated, or replugged into that home. It's called the matrix, for lack of a better description for it. When people say that they can see these things, they can only see what those things decide to show you because they go way, way, way beyond what you think. So they're showing you what you can take.
Right.
If that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. Okay, so from your experience, I think that for me has been important to understand, that and to ascertain as well, that everybody has these abilities. It's like literally like a plug has been plugged out of the wall socket, right? And kind of like you're not getting that power source or that power surge, like a hairdryer, I would imagine, right? So the hairdryer is kind of like being plugged out of the wall. Doesn't mean the hairdryer is broken when it's not working. It just needs to be replugged into its power source again. So what we really need to be doing is to be replugged back into our power source again, right?
You have to be aware that there is a power source, and what the power source is in the first place. If you didn't know that to begin with, how would you know anything? Right. If you never heard of electricity, you'd be trying all kinds of things to get that hairdryer to work. None of it's correct until you understand what electricity is and how to turn that on. There's a lot of danger along the way too with that. Yeah. So just think of how that would work. It's actually kind of hard to explain this sometimes.
Yeah, I know that it is. But so how would you then recommend, if you would, that we start reclaiming or reconnecting, if you will? If I think, let's say all of them here all of our viewers on this platform are aware that we do have a plug and we are able to plug back into a power source that's going to give us those gifts again, or renew those gifts, if you will, reconnect, if that makes sense. So what would be the best way?
Well, the best way is to definitely plug back in with the master of the universe, the creator, the divine God. He made a way possible for us to do that through his son, Jesus, and the sacrifice that he gave for us. He took those scales off our eyes, those that wake up, to be able to see what we were supposed to see in the first place. That's one of the most important ways, to look at or take first, is that step. And it's not always a religious cut and dried situation. It's something you have to do every day. It's not something you can just, it's not a magic word. You have to actively participate with that on a daily basis. There's something we call faith. What was the acronym for fear you gave me the other day?
False evidence appearing real.
And faith is forsaking all, I trust him.
Yeah.
Good acronyms to live by. Not always easy. Like, I'm sitting here right now very uncomfortably because of my back. I'll tell you some background on that, just so you guys can pray more specifically for me. I worked in the oil fields of the Bakken in North Dakota for a few years, and working as a roughneck. If you know anything about the oil fields, it's really dangerous work. It's heavy work, and I tried to stop a 175,000-pound mass with my 350-pound body. That didn't work. Didn't work out so good. And my L5S1 is destroyed for the most part. I had to have an emergency laminectomy. It goes out easily. I was paralyzed for almost 2 years in a wheelchair. So that is the challenge I have, along with everything else. PTSD is a huge one. Chantelle's walked with me through some of that. It's tough. Like I said, there's lots of roadblocks. There's addiction. There's all kinds of things that have been thrown in my path. But here I am, still talking about faith, still pushing forward, still pushing ahead. So I want you guys to know that it's a battle. You have to want this battle every day, or you're not going to get it. If that makes any sense.
Makes a lot of sense. Definitely makes a lot of sense. So, wow. Let's talk about the solfeggio frequencies, the angelic frequencies, if you will, the choir of angels. How do we know what is good and what is not good? How does one, because I think there's, we know that there's so many, and I understand, obviously, there is faith and we've got to practice discernment, stuff like that. But I think so many people obviously are also maybe a little bit innocent to these things, maybe having a rough time discerning what's what in the pot. So can you talk to us about this choir of angels?
Well, it's not just one choir. There's 9 or 12, depending on who you talk to. And I believe there's a lot more than that. That's just what I was able to see. And they all have different ranks, they're different species, different functions. There are things called elementals, or the living ships, as we've talked about before. It's a world unto itself, and it's more real than here. What you see in front of you seems real to you, and it feels real to you, but this is nothing. This is, believe me, this is nothing compared to there. This is like a Lego toy set that we're playing with, with all the sophisticated things that we do here that we think we're doing. I refer back to the toilet brush, scepter, and the Burger King crown and the bath towel cape. That's kind of how they see us. We're less than children. We're very unaware of what's really happening. So, the misconception people make are angels and demons are diametrically opposed, which obviously they are. The demons are not angels. Fallen angels are angels. Think of that for a minute. Digest that for a minute. People lump that term demon into this massive overcovering arch of interpretation when you're kind of missing the point with that. You kind of have to know who your enemy is. And this is going to be an attempt to try to show you. And we're going to talk about the actual angels first. I don't like to say names because in the arcane, there's something called invocation. I don't like to invoke names. It's not because I'm afraid of them. I'm not. Fear has nothing to do with it. It's just that I know that stuff is real and it works. You have to be very careful. It'd be like if the word popcorn had magic power. I said popcorn 10 times in a row. All of a sudden your room is full of popcorn. That's kind of how that works. It's unbidden and out of the blue. Except you invited it.
It's a good example. That it really is a good example. The popcorn, say pop, and it's kind of like what Michael Jackson and a lot of the other singers were saying. I know Michael Jackson. I know I've often heard him say that it's like, which is why also in music, and we know that Lucifer, who is God's favorite angel, so to speak, has the most beautiful singing voice. So that's why I do believe also a lot of the music industry, okay, those guys and women have the most beautiful voices. So many of them that have actually sold out, right, have the most beautiful voices. So they use music a lot to entice the hordes, right? So the choirs, let's say the song that has a choir that you repeat, right? And you repeat that enough times, you repeat that mantra enough times, it becomes like a mantra, right? So you then invoke whatever that is. And that's actually, again, spell casting, right?
Exactly. You're speaking a written word that was spelled out. You're speaking it through the crystals in your mouth. You're enhancing with those crystals. You're saying it forth. You're invoking and you're evoking and you're conjuring things. That's exactly how it works.
Wow.
So with the difference between angels and demons, it's Rephaim, the fallen Nephilim who died in the flood. And they didn't all die in the flood. Let's be clear on that. Some remained. Some people say that they reset, they started recreating Nephilim. I believe some of them survived that flood. The Rephaim are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim from before the flood, in all their different forms and phases. Humans called them demigods back then when they were alive, because they could live far longer than we could. I believe that 120-year curse wasn't just for regular humans, it was for them. So they couldn't live for 5,000, 6,000, 10,000, 20,000 years. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. I want to just make sure I've got this right here. So maybe you can just work with me on this for a moment. So when we look at the fallen angels, right? The fallen angels, and we've also had this conversation before. So they obviously fell, and they're super powerful because they brought God's original, whatever it was, music, astrology, astronomy, whatever. They have whatever they learned in heaven direct from God is what they brought with them. So that's what makes them so intelligent, makes them so good at what they do, right? So just because someone has gifts like that, it doesn't mean it's necessarily good, right? Because we often think, well, this person is such a good psychic or such a good numerologist or such a good this or whatever it might be. Very often that information that they're using is not the way it's intended to be used originally, right? So they've fallen with a lot of very critical or very amazing information. But then they captured semen from males. So I would have thought that was humans. But what you're telling me, it wasn't necessarily humans. It could be from any male, whether it was animal or whatever. So they literally took the semen from the male because they don't have bodies, right? And then they played around with that DNA. And then they, in fact, would have implanted that in the females, the women, right? And then that offspring is the Nephilim. So the Nephilim are the offspring of the fallen angels, right? And then those of them who died in the flood, and I know that you're saying there were still quite a few that were left behind, sure. And I'm talking more about the disembodied spirits of those that died in the flood, right? Were then the Rephaim, right? So it's the Nephilim and then the Rephaim. And then basically, so it's the Rephaim and the demons, or the demons would be the same thing. So a lot of people are calling demons, but in fact it's Rephaim, right? And they would then need to be, in order for them to manifest, they would need a body of a human, an animal, or some type of object, like a statue, for example, and the greys. Like, so now when we're looking at the ETs, like these cute little gray things, right? That's actually an avatar that these guys have used with their technology, like the homunculus, right? Have been
Exactly.
yeah. So they've created this, and it's really a body that has no reproductive system. It's kind of like expendable. So then these disembodied spirits of the Rephaim would then go into the ETs and an animal. And I know we've spoken about this before in previous shows where you've spoken about where these things were traded. They wanted the body of an animal for this and blah, blah, blah. So a body of a human, an animal, or an object, and like literally the homunculus, which is what they've created, these little ETs, the extraterrestrials. So they're not really something that comes out of a cute or necessarily an alternate world, but it's really something that these angels, the fallen angels and the Nephilim, etc., have created so that they have a host for their chaotic spirits that are running around the earth, right? Is that right? Have I got it pretty
much in a nutshell? That's how that kind of works. Yes, it's hard to know where they got this original genetic material from, because it kind of implies that there was creation here before that happened, and that is its own rabbit trail by itself. I've always known the Rephaim as shades. I never did call them Rephaim until recently. And you hear that with was it Saul that tried to summon from the witch of Endor? He tried to summon Samuel to give him advice. What showed up was Samuel's shade from Abraham's bosom, or from Sheol, or from hell, if you want to call it that. His shade showed up, his actual shade. So his disembodied soul form showed up. That's what a shade is. Now, these Rephaim don't have a place in heaven. They don't go back to God. They're angelic spirits, or halfways anyway. So they go to the second heaven, or the air. This brings up one of the angelic choirs called the powers. The fallen ones come from all choirs. A good lot of them come from the powers. That's like third sphere.
Wow.
Hold on just a minute here. I'll be right back.
Wow. I mean, that's super intense, actually. So the way I'm understanding this is that it's not, there's different levels, right? And there's different divisions, if you will. I'm trying to like put it in my mind where I can quite sort of conceive it, sort of different realms, different divisions, different levels of these different disembodied spirits of sorts. I mean, I think this is actually quite amazing. I think, Jessica, what you're saying there is no hell. I think there might be different levels of where these things actually hang out. Where and I know what Caleb was actually saying earlier, not today necessarily, but in previous shows, like Hell, Gleitner, I can't remember the name of the other one. It's like really the realms of chaos, and these things are actually hanging out there waiting for these bodies so they can reincarnate again, basically. So I'm just waiting for Caleb. I know he's probably seeing his dog, sorting his dogs right now. And I'm just going to actually check what, Caleb, where did you learn this? Just experience or training? Lexi, Abby, if you go back to the beginning of Caleb's shows, he actually explains he was pretty much in the arcane. He studied all the levels. He studied all the levels of magic, basically. He was taken into the system as a gateway kid at the age of 5. He was in the Wild Hunt, studied the arcane. He was in the military as well. So basically, he has 35 years of personal experience around the stuff. So he has a lot of knowledge around that. And what he often will tell you is that he doesn't like to give too much information about certain things all at the same time, because there are a lot of people out there that will use some of the information in a way that he doesn't really want them to. So he gives it to us in a way that we can understand it, type thing.
All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. Just had to go deal with something.
Yeah, no, that's all good. I know that you've got your wolves. And interesting, yeah, a question I wanted to ask you, Caleb, as well. Who are the Greekos, the Pleiadians? Are there, so I know that the Pleiadians, oopsie, sorry, I didn't mean to put that up there. The Pleiadians are often referred to as the Greys. The dark side of the Pleiadians are the Greys. I mean, what do you say about that?
Well, that's where we kind of get into the Elohim, which is a different subject altogether than this, but it's pretty closely related.
Okay, well then we'll do that on another day. Then, if it's not directly related to this,
what I can say about it is that the Greys, like I said, they're like the movie Avatar. Other beings have stepped into those bodies to control them. Those other beings are what I've mentioned it before, called the Dominion, or the elves. If you think about it, elves, Elohim, think about that for a minute. Yeah. Plug that together. And we'll have to talk about that some other time.
Yeah, the Elohim. Because aren't there like 7 Elohim, right? Aren't there like 7 Elohim that began?
you can look at it that way if you want to. It's a multi-layered subject, so.
Okay.
When you first get introduced to the elves, it's a very different reality than you can think. And they as a whole race fell. So they made a decision to fall, an informed decision, which means it was a deliberate sin.
Wow. Why was that?
I'm not sure. If I was in that position, I don't know that I'd make that choice. I know I wouldn't. But then how can I say that? Because I have plenty of times in my life made informed decisions to do dumb things. We all have. It's called the sin nature. So.
Wow.
But the elves call themselves the Dominion. So there's another reference to angelic requires dominions, powers. You can see how that ties together.
Yeah. What are the elementals? Or is that now obviously like the nature spirits or what?
Right. That's like the gardener, let's say.
Yeah.
The gardener doesn't necessarily like you or dislike you, but he's doing his job. And you can sway him one way or the other.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Totally. So if somebody, let's say you might be working with a friendly tree sprite today, but if someone else has more power over him, they could easily. So they're very fickle, in other words. Is that what you're saying? They're fickle.
Well, as fickle as the light bulb. I mean, it's really that simple.
Yeah.
Light bulb either works or it doesn't, depending on the power you put into it, or if it's still all together.
Right. Right.
You can also fix a light bulb to smoke meth or crack out of it. So think of that too.
Wow.
The light bulb by itself is not evil, but it can be used for good intention or it can be used for bad. That on a basic level, that's what it boils down to the most, is how it's used. It's like the living ships. I mean, the living ships weren't necessarily evil, but they definitely interact and function with the seraphim and the cherubim. And in fact, they don't function apart from them. So they kind of didn't really have a choice, I don't think. When they developed their own consciousness, then they had a choice, just like we do. And they still chose bad. They still chose evil. That's just my thought on it anyway, from what I saw.
Wow.
And I just saw, is there a connection between parasites and demons? Absolutely. God did not create parasites. That's genetic mutation for sure. And it's also taking elementals and twisting them for ill gain and for bad problems and for bad reasons. Some of them are nanotechnology that we see as biological entities, because we're not sophisticated enough to see where they came from first. At least not yet, anyway. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. Wow. There's so much. But so since like really, if we look at Earth, it's a planet of duality, right? So there would surely be, to everything that there's a dual force. So where there's the good there would be the negative there. So that negative polarity, right? So what would be, let's say, on the positive, like if we're looking at the elementals, for example, what would be on the positive of that?
Well, it's all linear lines of flowing power one way or another. It's up or down. I mean, it's kind of pretty clearly defined in the way they describe things, as above, so below. if you think of it, it's just a recreation or them stealing what's above so they can still have it below, when they could have just went in the right direction and kept what they had in the first place. Think about that for a minute. If that makes any kind of sense at all.
Yeah, it does make sense to me. But, I also believe that, I mean, there has to be a divine reason, right? I like to think like this. There has to be a divine reason why there's a negative polarity to all of these things at the same time. Isn't that part of what actually evolves us? Isn't that what evolves our consciousness at the same time? Where we now, where we also faced with these challenges, right? It's the contrast really of that all good or that all flowing or that all blissful, if you want to look at it like that, right? So when there's the opposite polarity of that, or the negative polarity, so to speak, wouldn't that be what really enables us to grow through these experiences and really, as I say, evolve our consciousness?
Right. Somebody mentioned about element 115. That, and I'll say this as clearly as I can, that is directly related to soul gem technology and how they use soul gems. Because the Rephaim and the fallen angels don't have access to God's spirit anymore. They have to use something like that as a stand-in, as a connector between the physical and the spiritual. That's what God's spirit does for us. It connects us to God between the physical and the spiritual. So that's what soul gems do too. And like I told you once before when we talked about soul gems, we could talk for months on that and how it works. But that's a direct correlation. They found that ship on an archaeological dig. Well, think of what I've been telling you when we found the ships that we found. Not the first ship out there that's ever been found. They're all very ancient. It's interesting that people even know that.
I think that's very incredible, because it's like really what we're seeing, yeah, again, and that's obviously like the again, the fallen angel technology, right? It's they've really taken God's gifts or God's purest creations, if you will, and they've completely corrupted it. It's like they've turned it into something so disgusting in so many ways, right? That it really is. It's almost like they've gone to extreme lengths to see just how they can corrupt God's creation, right?
Right, they're trying to get even with God, to put it simply.
Like the jealous son.
Right.
The son who wants to be as good as daddy-o, no one, and he just can't ever be as great as his father is, or so he thinks anyway. So he's now got to try and outdo his father. Well, just something, Nada is asking, Caleb, will you speak about quantum time crystals? Is there, I mean, I know that's kind of like getting a little bit off topic here. I don't know. How do you feel about that? Are we still on topic?
It all relates together at some point, so sure.
Okay.
Like I've told you plenty of times, your body is full of rare earth elements of all different types and sorts: metals, liquids, solids, fluids. The difference between fluids and liquids are its composition and what's in it. This is all alchemy. And mostly what we have, that some of the most important things that are in our body are crystals. And quantum time crystals would be beryllium. That's one of the main ones in your brain. And if you've ever gotten high, stoned, drunk, whatever, they interact with that beryllium using those substances to produce a false sense of time shift. That's how they do that. Wow. I'm not sure the exact chemicals that they use every time, but I know that it interacts with the beryllium that's in your brain.
Wow.
Like I said, this goes deep, and I could talk a whole lot more about alchemy. Like I said, we've only scratched the surface on some of this stuff altogether.
We will get there. We will get to the whole alchemy, because I know that you've part of your expertise, experience is that of the alchemist.
Right.
So, interesting question here from Eli Love as well. Interesting. Is Tourette's syndrome caused by demons? Tourette's syndrome has got to be one of the funniest. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. It's one of the funniest things I've heard.
If you have something that besets you, it's probably a chemical reaction to something else. And those nanobot parasites are giving off chemicals all the time that interact with your body and cause problems like that. Same with, let's say, Alzheimer's, say, aging. There's all kinds of things that interact with your body and cause these problems. It can come from God, that's for sure.
Right. Absolutely.
I'm thinking of, what was that movie? The two Irish brothers. Something Saints, whatever. Anyway, there's an old man in there that always said, ass, just all of a sudden. I don't think God would want you to be saying that all
the time. I'm sorry, I can't help laughing at that. It's the funniest.
I'm not making fun, but what I'm saying is God's not going to do something like that. He's not Boondock Saints, that's the name. So the guy just all of a sudden belts that out. Ass! In front of a bunch of nuns.
And worse, not just ass, okay? It is like seriously so much worse than ass that comes out of those people's mouths. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay, it just makes sense. Yeah, so Kimberly's saying Parkinson's as well. Yeah, so it's very, very interesting to understand these things. Wow. Okay.
Right. So the concept of that time shift crystals, they can definitely do that because you can get into a fog where they entrap you. Say someone captured your soul and you didn't know it, and you feel entrapped in something. That's why it feels like almost no time has gone by for you. And maybe 10 years went by and you didn't know it. It doesn't seem like 10 years went by. So that's how they're able to do that. Try to capture your soul when you're the strongest that you can be.
Wow. That makes a lot of sense. I'm also just interested here, looking at Jay's comment here. The Bible talks about worms infesting the bodies of the people who didn't listen to God when he said to take what you need for food, but they didn't listen, were greedy and fell ill. What is your comment on that?
Well, that's the very picture of disobedience when he said, take what you need and not keep more, because I think you're talking about the manna. The manna not only rotted, but it turned foul in their body too. They tried to take more. So he gives you, it's like that song called The Sparrows. I don't know if you guys have listened to that song. Sparrows don't worry about tomorrow. They have enough on their plate for today. They don't know where their next meal's coming from. God always takes care of them. I've never seen a sparrow with a tin can in its hand and a sign saying homeless.
Exactly.
They're always taken care of.
But I think that's every, if we look at nature as well, I mean, I look at the wild animals here, like you look at a lion. Lions only hunt when they're hungry. I mean, you'll often see at the watering hole, you'll have lions and buck and stuff drinking at the same time sometimes, because the lion will only hunt when it's hungry, right? It doesn't go and hunt 17 buck all at the same time and dry them, because for 3 months from now, right? Very interesting that. So, and it's really about trusting that we are being provided for. It's about trusting that there's enough. It's about trusting that God will always provide. So again, that comes with trust and faith, right? So when you have that thing like greed, it really is a fear of not having. If we look at that in its opposite polarity, people are greedy when they fear they're not going to have enough. And of course, that greed can become completely over the top. It can go take on a whole new level. What do you say about that?
Yeah, that's, according to the Catholics, one of the 7 deadly sins is greed. I think any sin's deadly. If you're trying to stand in the presence of a holy God, most people don't understand what that even means. When he decides to show you something of himself, he definitely is shielding most of himself from you. You just burn to a crisp instantly. You couldn't stand in that radiance. Same with these angels. Even these demons can do that too, because they stood in that light of eternity for who knows how long. How long is eternity? You have to ask those questions too. If that makes any sense to you.
How long is eternity? I'm going to ask you that question.
It's forever.
How long is forever? Come. Spit it out. Spit it out.
Having stepped out of the time stream more than a few times, you have plenty of time to accomplish a lot of things. It's coming back to the time stream that's difficult. You basically take back physical ailment, illness, addiction, problems, sins, worries. Your body breaks, and you're subject to death here. Outside of the time stream, you are not.
Right.
That's probably heretical to some people to hear that. And it's not easy to understand unless you've done it yourself. It is possible, just not for most people whom God has not gifted that to. In the arcane, using evil ways, you can definitely try it and actually accomplish it. I'm talking about using soul magic. So,
yeah, absolutely.
hear a lot about Solomonic magic and this and that. That's what this world seems to be concerned with. I studied Enochian magic, which is a little different than Solomonic.
What is Enochian magic?
It's the next level of Solomonic magic.
Right. We're going to get there, right? Or
Yep.
are you going to give us some juicy tidbits?
You've heard many times. Heard many times about Logos.
Ah, yeah.
The language of heaven, and it's what the tapestry of reality is made with, is Logos.
Right.
You'll have to watch that video with the lasers.
Yeah.
If you have, it's elusive truth to put that out there. So, obviously, they use DMT to make some of that happen, but even without DMT, you can still see it if you look, if you're able to see. That's one of the tests to get into the Arcane College.
Are you talking about DMT as in that the hallucinogenic?
Yep.
So is that why people do stuff like you're going to often find, like, let's say people do ayahuasca? What's your take on things like ayahuasca, which is pretty much the same as DMT, right? Or it's very similar anyway. And stuff like peyote cactus, San Pedro, stuff like that. What's your take on that? Magic mushrooms. A lot of people use that.
Talk about instant activation of your third eye.
Right. So are you saying that's a good thing or not?
Well, it goes back to what I said about not being ready.
Right.
It is a high, so it's not being sober. It's not being in your right mind. So you're easy to influence then. Easy to make you make bad decisions.
Right. And I see what Jay is saying. Yeah, DMT is a natural chemical in our body, and I know that, which is pretty much why I'm asking. But obviously, also we know we've been dumbed down, right, in many ways, and the pineal, etc., is being calcified by the foods we've been given, stress in life, literally just a disconnection from God in general. Would you say, though, that let's say if somebody had to go there and maybe take something like that with the right intention? Because I will tell you this, I've done ayahuasca once, and I did that many years ago, and I'm going to probably go back to at least a decade, more than a decade ago. And I'll never forget, I didn't have one of these crazy way out my body. I did not do that. I always like to stay in my body. I'm very conscious of staying in my body, but what I do is I move into the different layers of my cells, because I believe God lives within me and within the cellular structure of my physical being.
Yes, hold on.
Okay. So I will never forget it at the time that when I was doing that, it became very clear to me that I only ever had to do ayahuasca once, because something like ayahuasca is the living vine. It's the living plant, right? And it's the feminine plant. So once you've done it, it stays within your system, and it awakens whatever it needs to awaken within you. And you can take it from there as to move in the direction that you need to. But it's like it was like more like a catalyst to activate what was already in me. And that's the way I saw ayahuasca. But I've also seen people who do it once a month for like, I don't know how many years, but I've also seen people go crazy using that stuff too often. So again, I'm just going to say with stuff like that, yeah, I like what you're saying, Nada. Serb is the new high. I totally agree with that. And Jay, I just want to say as well here, sorry, the comments are coming, so I'm missing a lot of them, and I'm hoping not to. People use DMT external to try and reconnect. Yes, they do, and that's what I'm saying. I think if you use stuff like that in a single time, that for me was very clear to me when I did ayahuasca many years ago. That I only ever needed to use it once, because once that was reawakened in me, it was up to me to keep the plant alive. It's like the seed was planted. It's like a seed, the way I see that. You awoke it, it's been awoken in you, and now it starts growing, because it's known as the vine plant, the feminine plant. So she started growing, and it's up to me to keep her nurtured and nourished so that she could continue to grow and continue to give me information, or so to speak, right? And I also know, but I have to tell you, I've worked with a lot of people taking hard drugs, like stuff like cocaine and all sorts of stuff like that. I've observed people have incredible spiritual connections on hard drugs as well. And again, but I think anything like an addiction, the minute you start, whether it's to hard drugs, whether it's to opiates, whether it's to something like ayahuasca, which is supposedly the good thing, but any addiction is not a good thing. I don't know, Caleb, I don't know if you've heard anything I've said there. I've been talking to myself here. Again,
I've heard.
As long as you heard. Okay, so what's your take on that?
I'd say that most people are probably a quarter awake anyway. When they take substances or anything else, it makes them about half awake. Well, if you're half awake, how easy are you to influence?
Yeah.
That's a good way
Like
to see
lucid
it.
dreaming.
Right.
Isn't that a bit like lucid dreaming? Because when you're doing lucid dreaming, you could be very much under the influence of something else as well, right?
Right. You were talking about intention. I intended to go down to the bank with a handgun and withdraw some money. Some people call that robbery. I just call it a withdrawal.
Okay, what's your intention though? Like, right?
Right. One man's robbery is another man's withdrawal.
It's true.
It's actually kind of a sick way to look at it, but that is absolutely the truth.
Wow.
So to go into that unprepared, it's kind of like before the sacrifice of Jesus, how they had to come to God sometimes these ways. And who's to know that they're actually talking to God? Like I said, pin the tail on the donkey. You're in the middle of an 80,000 person stadium. They're all watching you, but you can't see them. Who has the advantage there? You or them?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So I think really at the end of the day, it's still, I mean, I think it's still best just to, I mean, when you have that connection with God, when you reconnect spiritually, you will be awoken by God in the way that you need to be at the time that you need to be. And, you know, there are things like, I mean, I agree, you know, it's like, I don't think it's very often that you just have this boof, this mind explosion overnight, and you go from being completely dumbed down to this enlightened being within like an hour or a minute or whatever. I think for most of us, it's a process. We have to change the way we do things. We have to change probably the way we eat. Food is our medicine in many ways because food supports the body, right? So in order to do these things, you need a healthy body. You need a healthy mind. You know, you need to be cleanliness is godliness. So it's like purifying the spirit, purifying the being, right? Where you can hear the true voice of God. So then you do know that it's God's voice because you won't have a doubt then. God will let you know that you're hearing God's voice.
Colleen just said something important about DMT, DM, and cough syrup. When I was a boy, 40 years ago, there was a hobby drug called Robitussin. They called it Robo. You take a 8-ounce bottle of Robitussin and drink the entire thing, and you would go into the craziest psychedelic trip outs you can imagine for about 12 hours straight. You'd see angels, you'd see the spirit world for sure. It was a terrifying experience. I did that one time, and that's all I needed to not ever want to do it again.
I kid you not, so did I at school. Everyone was drinking cough mixture. I remember there was a craze where when I was at school, everyone was drinking cough mixture or a certain type of cough mixture to get high or drunk or whatever it was they were doing. And one of my friends dared me to drink the cough mixture once, and I did. I mean, I was just trying to be badass. I was awake for like 3 days. I kid you not. I could not sleep. I was high as anything. I was seeing things. I was experiencing things. I was hearing things. I sat down stairs in the prep room, the homework room at the hostel. I was at boarding school. I just wrote. I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. I wrote like 3 hardcover books full of stuff I was just writing. It was actually, now that you mention it, I actually forgot about that. Thanks for reminding me of that experience. Wow. Makes sense. Wow.
Slender Man comes from that too. I just put that in the comments.
What, sorry?
Slender Man?
What? Yeah, what's that?
You'll have to look that up. It's something that teens have seen a lot. It started with the robo people.
Wow, this is very interesting. Anyway, cool.
So to get back to the subject matter at hand.
Yeah.
The Rephaim are the dead Nephilim. They're not just demons. It's not just a spirit.
Right.
They do have ranks and structures.
So demons and Rephaim are the same thing.
Well, if you say it under a general title, yes, they're the same thing. It pays
They're
to
just
know your
embodying. They're embodying different. They don't always embody the same body. So they'll take possibly a human body. Is that a dead human body, by the way, or could it be a? I mean, are we talking about some of these bodies that you're talking about in these mental institutions?
You just open another rabbit hole.
Oh, you know me, I'm going to open Ted.
Dead bodies that are inhabited or animated again are called revenants or drogers.
Spell that for me, please.
I'll put it in the comments.
Okay. Drogers.
Or revenants. Sorry, type slow here.
It's all good.
It's revenants with an N. I missed an N there.
Now, how long can a dead body inhabit a demonic spirit or a Rephaim?
All the way down to the skeleton.
Okay, sorry, writing it down there.
Think of Thing from the Addams Family, just the one hand.
Right. Wow.
So Joger, or what you would call zombies. They're just inhabited by Rephaim. Powerful Rephaim, but still Rephaim.
And how long can they keep that body alive? How long can it be active?
As long as the soul magic works.
Any specific length of time maximum?
Up to years.
Wow. Is that what they call a walk-in?
I'm not sure what that is.
We hear of these stories that sometimes people die and then another spirit inhabits that body. So let's say there's nothing necessarily too wrong with the body, but sometimes I've heard about that a lot. They're called walk-ins. So then you'd have a spirit that doesn't want to go through, or soul that doesn't want to go through the whole baby process or whatever. They will then inhabit a body that is maybe fresh, and maybe the person had a heart attack or whatever. It's not, the body's not damaged, right? But they can then take over that body. And then it's like, they'll go and they'll live with these families, but it's like the spirit knows who it is in this body, but it has to learn what this body was before. Do you know what I'm saying? So it would have to get to know the family and stuff like that again. I don't know if that's the same thing as a walk-in then.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing, I would say. There's no jokers because they're underground. See them a lot in those caves and tunnels. Yes, Joger are from Scandinavian folklore. That was my first area of study. I was an Odinist pagan. That's where I got into the arcane from.
An Odinist what?
Odinist pagan.
Pagan.
Very steeped in Icelandic witchcraft, for sure. Studied the prose Edda and the poetic Edda. That's where I learned the Havamal. So I began to speak runic.
Very interesting. Well, we'll I know that's a different part of what we're going to be getting into one of these days as well.
Right.
Wow. Well, I think we kind of hitting the end of our time here. Is there anything you want to maybe just end off with for today? And I know we're going to be having section 2 tomorrow night about this stuff as well, so there'll be a continuation tomorrow night. But is there anything you'd just like to maybe end off with?
Once again, I feel like we just barely touched on anything here. I'm not trying to hold anything back from you. I'm just trying to give it to you in bite-sized pieces like people want, with clarity and some kind of understanding, or pointing it out anyway. Most people have never heard of any of this kind of stuff, so it's just shocking to me because I've known this my entire life. So.
This is a comment from Duke. Caleb, do you know is it the Ura Linda book?
I probably do. It's one of the grimoires. Lots of grimoires. There's about 380 grimoires out there.
Right.
I had all of them in my library at one point.
Wow.
It was through the Icelandic witchcraft that I started to learn about low gaze. So we can get into the colors of magic and the 9 magics themselves.
Yeah. I think we'll be getting there soon, right?
Yeah.
Caleb,
Just looking at some of the comments.
Are you quiet or are you squeaking me? I haven't been squeaked tonight. That's quite a miracle.
No squeak. I'm just reading the comments.
Lovely. Okay. Well, I don't know. The squeaky sound. Wonderful. Okay. All right. Guys and gals, we're going to call it a day for today. And we shall see you back tomorrow, Sunday. It'll be either. Thank you, Grace and Mercy. You're so lovely. Thank you so much. We will see you tomorrow back either, I don't know, 7 or 8 o'clock our time. Just watch the show. Sorry, just watch the channel. We'll generally put the show up about a couple of hours before, just depending on the time. We'll either have it at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. my time. That's GMT +2, as you all know by now. So in the meantime, I don't know, Caleb, is there something you'd like to end off with just or before you end off for us in prayer?
Never really heard of walk-ins before. Maybe I called them something different, but that would have to do with soul magic for sure. Somebody taking over somebody's body. Yeah. I never heard about people dying to do that other than the joggers.
Right.
And I have heard of the Kensington Heights zombies in Philadelphia. You have to look that up. Some pretty scary thing, actually. You can see those spirits coming through. It's really actually not fun to watch if you ever see it. So
Kensington Heights. Sorry, just give me that again.
Kensington Heights zombies. Look it up on YouTube once.
I've got lots of homework to do today. I feel like I'm back at school. Grandma's back at school. Thanks.
Well, let's pray then.
Yeah.
Heavenly Father, I thank you for revelation. I thank you for peace and mercy. And I again ask for healing for myself, freedom for everybody around here that's on this show, and what travails them, what hurts them. Thank you for life and love. Thank you for mercy. Thank you for grace. Thank you for everything you do for us, for another chance to love you again. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Yay. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us again today, this evening. For me, it's 9:21 p.m. Yeah. And wherever you are in the world, I think it must be maybe lunchtime for you or morning, whatever. Take good care of yourself. See, I've got to speak. What can I say? The show would not be the show without me being squeaked, right?
Have a good day, folks.
Yeah, God bless you all. Take good care of you. Yeah. And I wish you tons of health, wealth, and lots of abundance. We'll see you tomorrow. Okay, bye.